At 10 o'clock sharp, the doors opened. No music, no announcement, no rush. Just two people holding hands, walking forward together. And in that silence, something rare happened. Time seemed to pause. This moment was never meant to impress. It did not ask for attention, nor did it attempt to compete with the noise of public celebration. Instead, it made a quiet declaration, one that carried weight precisely because it refused to perform. There was no excess, no theatrical framing, no invitation for applause. What stood out was intention. Every element suggested deliberation rather than display. This was not an event constructed for visibility, but a moment shaped by meaning. In choosing simplicity, they allowed the focus to remain where it belonged, on presence, not presentation. In a culture accustomed to turning personal milestones into spectacles, this restraint felt deliberate, even courageous. It suggested that some experiences lose their truth when they are exaggerated. By stripping the moment down to its essentials, they preserved its integrity. What unfolded was a statement about maturity, about knowing when something does not need to be explained or embellished. It reminded viewers that not all meaningful moments announce themselves loudly. Some arrive quietly, carrying significance that does not seek validation. This was not an attempt to be remembered. It was an expression of certainty, and that certainty spoke for itself. The image that stayed with people was not grand architecture or ceremony. It was two individuals walking at the same pace, neither ahead nor behind, side by side. This detail may seem small, yet it carried profound symbolism. In many traditions, one person leads while the other follows. Here, there was no hierarchy implied, no guiding hand pulling forward, no figure being ushered along, just shared movement. Walking side by side suggests equality not as an ideal, but as a lived reality. It reflects a relationship shaped by mutual endurance rather than dependency. The steps were measured, calm, and aligned, as though shaped by years of learning how to move together through uncertainty. For viewers, this moment resonated because it communicated partnership without explanation. It showed a bond that had already been tested away from cameras, away from applause. What we witnessed was not a beginning, but a continuation. In that walk, there was no urgency, no performance of joy, only balance. It quietly said, "We have walked difficult paths together before. This one, we will walk together too." Time in this story was never an obstacle. It was the teacher. 10 years did not unfold as a romantic waiting period filled with anticipation. Instead, it became a space where expectations were stripped away and replaced with patience, the kind that does not announce itself, the kind that simply stays. During those years, love was not measured by milestones, but by consistency, by remaining present when outcomes were unclear, by choosing commitment even when the future could not be neatly imagined. This was not love defined by certainty, but by resilience. What reshaped the meaning of love here was not endurance alone, but acceptance. Acceptance that progress can be slow, that happiness may arrive later than planned, and that staying is sometimes more powerful than promising. By the time this moment arrived, love was no longer something idealized. It had been tempered, grounded, and refined by experience. It was no longer loud or aspirational. It was stable. For viewers, this reframed love not as passion that burns quickly, but as presence that remains. And that quiet redefinition felt deeply relatable. We live in a time where meaning is often amplified through volume. The louder the moment, the more significant it is assumed to be. Against this backdrop, restraint becomes radical. What unfolded here resisted the instinct to heighten emotion. There was no dramatic crescendo, no emotional cue designed to instruct the audience how to feel. Instead, space was left open, for silence, reflection, and personal interpretation. This restraint did not diminish the moment, it deepened it. By refusing to overwhelm the senses, the experience invited viewers inward. It allowed them to bring their own histories, their own understanding of love, loss, and patience into the narrative. The absence of excess created room for authenticity. In a world saturated with constant stimulation, such quiet moments feel rare. They demand attention, not by force, but by sincerity. This was a reminder that emotion does not need to be manufactured to be powerful. Sometimes the most meaningful experiences are those that trust the audience to feel without instruction, and that trust is what made the moment linger. One of the most quietly moving aspects of this moment was the role of family. Not through intervention, but through restraint. Parents were present, attentive, and visibly emotional, yet they did not dominate the space. There were no speeches that redirected focus, no gestures that sought to frame the moment through authority. What they offered instead was trust. This kind of presence is rare. It reflects an understanding that support does not always mean guidance, and love does not require control. By stepping back, the families allowed the couple to step forward freely. For many viewers, this struck a deep chord. It mirrored an ideal often unspoken, the hope that family can be a foundation rather than a weight. That concern can exist without interference. That love can be expressed through letting go. In this silence, there was respect. In this distance, there was care. It demonstrated that sometimes the most meaningful parental act is not protection, but confidence. Confidence in the choices made by those you raised. As they continued down the aisle, hands still joined, there was no urgency in their steps. They were not rushing towards happiness. They were arriving at peace, and perhaps that is why this single moment, a quiet walk, two hands intertwined, has lingered so powerfully in the minds of those who watched, because it showed that sometimes the most meaningful stories are not announced. They are simply walked. Thank you for spending these moments with us on Update X24H. If this story resonated with you and you appreciate thoughtful updates that look beyond the headlines, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and stay connected with us. Your support allows us to continue sharing stories that matter, stories of patience, resilience, and quiet strength. Until next time, thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you again on Update X24H.